Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a video that I'm really excited to talk about, and it's all just about the topic of kind of what you don't see and all of the behind the scenes stuff that goes into a hike or even a camping trip. And this video was inspired by a recent Instagram post that I made, and I'll read that to you here. I went on a hike with a friend and I posted a photo of me at the mountain peak, and the caption that I wrote and the photo and everything seemed to like really hit home, and there were a lot of questions and comments on that post, so I wanted to answer some of those questions here and just talk a little bit more about this topic. So here's what I wrote over on Instagram in case you missed it. I think people assume that hiking is always easy for me, that I can just casually zip right up to the mountain peak, no problem, all smiles. But this is far from reality. What you don't see in this photo is all the planning and preparation that went into this hike before I even got on the trail. You don't see how slowly I climbed, how out of breath I was, how many breaks I took, the gear I packed, and how tired my legs were. It's important that we talk about these aspects of hiking. And so I really wanted to touch on that here in case you don't follow me over on Instagram. I'll put the link to my Instagram in the description box below so you can follow me over there. With social media, we all kind of know that social media is just those highlight reels, right? And we see photos of people on the tops of mountains and in these beautiful places, and it looks so effortless and it looks so beautiful. And then the reality is that sometimes it's really freaking hard and it's sweaty and you're out of breath and you're tired and you want to take a break, and just it's not that magical carefree moment that you see on Instagram. And so I wanted to talk about my experience because I mean that's really all that I can talk about, but I can assure you that hiking is not always easy for me. And like I said in that Instagram post, there is so much that you don't see in that one photo. You don't see the planning before I even got to the trail. And I think that's a huge, huge part of hiking that doesn't get talked about enough. There's so much planning that I'm doing before I even get to the trail, whether that's preparing my gear, making sure that it's organized, packed, and that it's all working properly, researching the trail, learning the mileage, the elevation gain, looking at a topographical map and getting a sense of what that hike is going to be like. So there's so much planning that goes behind that photo. And then on that particular hike where that photo was taken, that was at the peak, and that was a hard hike for me. And I think that's what inspired the post, was because I was getting ready to post this photo of me in this beautiful location looking out at the mountains and all. I was like so happy, right? Because I had just reached the top. But what you didn't see was minutes before that, I was over on the trail trying to catch my breath, really struggling through that last mile of the hike. So it's important to talk about all this because everyone is going to have different experiences when they're out on the trail. So I want to answer some of your questions because there are a lot of really good questions in that post. And a lot of them were asking about, one, how I train for a hike, and two, how you kind of know if a hike is going to be easy or hard. And I think both of those are really good questions. So first of all, how do I train for hiking? For me, I really just hike. That is kind of the main way that I get better at hiking throughout the summer. But in general, I'm also doing CrossFit. So I really enjoy CrossFit. I love lifting weights. I don't love cardio, but I do CrossFit pretty regularly throughout the week when I'm at home and just in my normal routine. And CrossFit is awesome because it builds up your strength, but it's not always, I found it doesn't always directly translate to hiking because it's really hard to train for prolonged periods of physical activity, like going up a trail for hours on end. So I think for me, I just enjoy CrossFit. Like I said, I enjoy weight training. So I gravitate towards the workouts and the style of exercise that I enjoy. And I like to have a little bit more muscle. So that's just like me and my personal goals. But when it comes to hiking, so I don't do a ton of hiking in the winter or anything like that, but when the spring comes around, I know that it's gonna take me a little bit of time to kind of work up into like hiking shape. And so I just know that I'll choose easier hikes for me. I'll choose shorter hikes and I'll just kind of do them frequently and sort of build up that endurance over the summer. That's just what works for me. As the spring is getting closer, sometimes I'll add in a little bit more cardio into my everyday workouts. Like I'll do some more running and just kind of try to get in a little bit more endurance shape for those longer hours on the trail. But I think in terms of training for hikes, I think it's an important thing to be thinking about, absolutely. But for me, my just whole philosophy around exercise is doing things that I enjoy, because that's how I'm gonna actually stay consistent at it. And so yeah, for me, that's just CrossFit and maybe adding on a little extra cardio and then actually getting out on the trails, starting off easy, starting off slow earlier in that spring, and then kind of working up to bigger, longer hikes in the summer and in the fall. So I know that I am just not one of those people that's like naturally an endurance athlete type of person. So hiking for me is maybe harder than someone who runs marathons or someone who can just zip right up the mountain. We've all seen those people that pass us on the trail that are just like, whew, whew, whew. They get up and they're like on the way down on the time you're still like working your way up. So that's okay. I think it's important just kind of knowing where you're at, knowing your body, knowing what your abilities are, and then tailoring your hikes and your fitness training to that, I think is really important. Now, the next question that I really want to talk about is how you know if a hike is going to be hard or easy, and just how you kind of assess a hike. And this is such an important question and something that is often overlooked, especially if you're new to hiking. This is something that you're probably not thinking as much about, but there's some really concrete things that I want to talk about that I do to help me mentally prepare for a hike and know what I'm getting myself into. First of all, I do a lot of research at home. Like I already said, I never hit a trail just like hoping that I'm gonna make it or wondering how long it is or how hard it's gonna be. Like, no, I spend a lot of time really getting clear on what I'm getting into so that I can prepare both mentally, physically, and with the appropriate gear. There's two big pieces of information that I'm looking at. One is, of course, the mileage, and the second one is the elevation gain of the hike. So mileage is easy. We all kind of deal with mileage in some way throughout the day, and we kind of have a sense of that, right? Like we kind of have a sense of what a mile is, what 2 miles is. Like we drive, we walk, and so that's a sort of familiar data point that we can wrap our head around. So when I say I'm going on a 5-mile hike, I kind of have a sense of how far that is. And I always think of things like I used to play sports in high school and we used to do laps around the track. So a lot of times I even break it down to like how many laps that is around a track, and I get a sense of that distance. But what people don't always look at or have a sense of is the elevation gain, and that is a crucial piece of information to look at for a hike. So the elevation gain is really going to tell you a lot of information, but unfortunately, if you're new to hiking, if I say, oh, this hike is 5 miles and it has 3,000 feet of elevation gain, it can be kind of like, well, what the heck does that mean, right? Like we don't have a reference point for elevation gain as much as we do for mileage. That's gonna be one of those things that you want to, of course, research beforehand and know going into your hike. But it's also gonna take a few hikes for you to really get a sense of what that elevation gain feels like for you and your body on a particular hike. But for me, I've gone on so many hikes over the years that when I hear 3,000 feet of elevation gain over whatever mileage, I kind of have a sense in my head, okay, that's gonna be hard for me. Oh, okay, that's pretty easy for that amount of mileage. It should be pretty mellow. Now, the third piece of information that I would recommend is looking at a topographical map, because what that's going to show you is how that elevation gain happens over that duration of the hike. So for example, if you have, let's just keep it simple, have 1 mile hike and you have 1,000 feet of elevation gain, is that a steady climb? Like, is it just steady like this? A topographical map will tell you that. Or is it flat, 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 and then all of a sudden at the end of the hike, it goes straight up and you have all that elevation gain at the end? Or is it a hike that goes more like this, right? That's important information to know. And understanding how to read a topographical map, how to use a map are important skills for anyone that's heading out into the woods on hikes. And so you can look at that information before you leave, and then again, you know what to expect when you hit the trail, which can help you better prepare. The last thing I want to say about knowing how difficult a hike is you'll see when you research hikes, they'll say like easy, moderate, hard. I would disregard that entirely. Like throw that stuff out the window. It is completely useless in my mind. It actually, I think sometimes can get you into scenarios where you're on a hike that's harder than you thought. Because I have looked at that where I'm like, oh, this thing says moderate. And then I go and I'm like, God damn, this is freaking hard, right? So those blanket terms, easy, moderate, hard, are so subjective, and I think they're completely useless. Knowing distance, elevation, and factoring in your ability level, where you are physically, is going to be the best way to kind of determine how something is going to be easy or hard for you. It's you, right? And so you are responsible for yourself, and that brings me kind of to the next little bit that I want to talk about, which is knowing your abilities. Hiking is not always easy. I go on hikes that I know are going to be a challenge for me. So for example, the hike that I showed in this photo on that peak, I think it was like 7 or 8 miles. And I did it with one of my good friends, and we've hiked before. We're pretty much on the exact same page when it comes to hiking. We hike at the same pace, we like to take breaks. And so we went together in the middle of the summer, and I knew that that was going to be a hard hike. It was 3,000 feet of elevation gain. And so over an 8-mile hike, that's a pretty steep hike. And so I knew mentally what I was getting into, and I knew that it was going to be a challenge. And so I paced myself. I took breaks. I ate snacks. I stopped when I was tired. I caught my breath, and I just moved slowly through that hike. We get to the last mile. There's 1,000 feet of elevation gain in the last mile. And both of us, and we were over 10,000 feet. So the elevation is also another thing that you probably want to be factoring in. Sea level versus hiking at 10,000 feet. I mean, that's going to affect you for sure. So on this hike, we were over 10,000 feet, and I was feeling it. I was tired. I was out of breath. I knew I was going to hike slow. And I just kept moving, kept really aware of my body and how I was feeling. And I worked my way up to the top. And then when I got to the top, I felt so freaking good, right? Like I felt like I really accomplished something. I did something that was challenging. And then we hiked down and we had a great day. There's a lot of those moments on the trail for sure where you're going out and it's hard. But it's important to also know your abilities, know your limits, and be self-aware enough to turn around if that's what feels right. That is something that is so important to be aware of, and the mark of someone who is a good, responsible hiker is someone who can say, okay, this isn't right today. I'm gonna turn around for my safety. There's a fine line, I think, when you're hiking between pushing yourself through something that is challenging that you know you can do, but also listening to your body, listening to your intuition, and turning around if that's what feels right. If you kind of know that I don't feel good right now, or this isn't safe. I need to take care of myself and turn around and hike back down. So knowing your abilities and being self-aware enough to make those good decisions is really important as a hiker. And again, these are not the things that you're seeing in Instagram photos or in fun YouTube vlogs. You're not seeing these moments all the time on the trail because they're hard to film. It's hard to film when you're uncomfortable or you're just working through, you're going up that steep section, you can't breathe, right? So, but these are parts of hiking. And so what I want to leave you with is one of my favorite quotes that I think about all the time when I'm hiking. And it is, "The summit is not the only place on the mountain." So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience and just tell you guys that it's not always easy for me. I don't just run up these hikes carefree. There's so many important aspects of hiking, whether it's planning, proper gear, and then being aware and listening to your body when you're out on the trail. Those are all really important things. And so remember that the summit is not the only place on the mountain. And I don't know, I just wanted to connect with you guys because I know so many of you feel this. It's just not represented a lot on video and social media. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, just your thoughts on this topic. Did you like this video? Do you have any additional questions? Follow me over on Instagram. I'll put the link below, and I'll see you in the next one.